back to your meeting. And tell him he can go.
Okay.
All right, Larry.
All right, very good. Thank you. And welcome everybody. Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to the May Oldham County Board of Adjustments and Appeals. My name's Larry Otterback. It is about 9:15 and we are now in session. We have two cases before us today. Procedures for both cases will be the same. Staff will read the staff report. There will be a round of questioning by the board members to staff. When we're done with that, staff, if you have any letters of support or opposition, if you can supply them at that time. Following that, I will call the applicant. You will be sworn in, or I apologize. We will not be doing the swearing in at this time, but I will call the applicant forward. You will introduce yourself, state your name and address, and tell us what it is that you would like to do and justify your project. When we're done with that, there will be a round of questioning by board members to the applicant. And when we're done with that, the applicant can stop the justifying the project. I will call anybody that wishes to speak in favor or those opposed to the application. We will start with those in favor. If we have anybody, you will announce yourself, state your name and address, and tell us why you're in favor. And then the exact same thing for those opposed. You will announce yourself, state your name and address, and tell us why you're opposed. There will be a round of questioning by board members to those in favor and those opposed. And when we're done with that, I will call the applicant back and you'll have a time for rebuttal. And then any of the opposition will also have a time for rebuttal. Following that, we will start with the opposition for final statements and then the applicant. You'll have time for final statements, and then there will be a round of questioning by board members to anybody. Following that, I'm going to close the floor for public hearing, open it up for general discussion with the board members, and call for an up and down vote. With that, I would like to go ahead. I know we're online, but if you could mute your cell phone, just in case you're speaking, at least you'll have your cell phone muted. Please mute your mics just to stop any background noise. And that can be done if it looks like there's a few that might still have their mics unmuted. But if you move your mouse, it will show a bar at the bottom of your screen. Bottom left-hand corner is how you can mute and unmute your mics. All right.
Larry, before you start, I don't see Mike Riley on here. He was here. I don't know where he went. I'm gonna wait a second and see if he logs back in.
On the list of participants, it doesn't look like he's there.
Yeah.
I can call him.
I'll call him. Maybe you stay with it. I'll call him. I got his number here.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Well, let's go ahead and start. Tom, I believe it's you that's going to read the staff report, if I'm not mistaken. So, Tom, if you could read the first one.
Do you want me to read the docket as the clerk into the record, Larry?
Yeah, Mike's not. Yeah, go ahead. Please do so.
Yeah. Docket OC-20-002, an application has been filed requesting front, rear, side, and front parking area setback variances for a proposed structure on property located at 6119 Hit Lane, Louisville.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy. All right, I will now start sharing my screen. And we will go to the slideshow. All right. Look fine to everybody so far?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So the proposal is an application was filed requesting a front, rear, side, and front parking area setback variances for a proposed.
Are we not waiting for Mike?
Structures on property located at 6119 Hit Lane, Louisville. It is zoned I-1 light industrial and is just a little bit over 3 acres. Here we have an aerial map. Here's our pavement and building map.
Tom, if I can interrupt for a second, Mike's computer quit, so we're going to just run. We have a quorum with 4 board members.
Would you like me to continue?
Yes.
Okay. So here's our zoning map. As you can see, it's I-1 is surrounded by AG1, which is agriculture. And we have a little bit of C3 on Hit Lane with I2 and residential and a little bit of light industrial down Hounds Lane. So there's no previous site history for the site. So the applicant is proposing 48 individual storage units dispersed throughout 6 structures. Per the submitted site plan, 5 structures are proposed, with 1 existing as detailed below. And we have, this is our existing structure right here, with the other 5 that are surrounded in bold or have bold lines. Those are the proposed. So unit 1 is an existing 10,000 square foot structure. Unit 2 is 8,750 square feet. Unit 3 is 8,050 square feet. Unit 4 is 9,200 square feet. Unit 5 is 6,900 square feet. And unit 6 is 7,500 square feet. Existing unit 1 and the existing parking area were constructed in 1992, therefore are legal non-conforming in nature. The property accesses the Hit Lane right-of-way via a 956-foot access easement, which is 60 feet wide. The access easement is shown in purple. The existing front parking area is shown in red, and the existing structure is shown in blue. Per section 190-040, the front building setback is 100 feet. The applicant is requesting a front building setback variance of 58 feet to be 42 feet from the front property line, which would include units 1, 2, and 6. The front property line or the front building setback is the line shown in red. Per section 190-040, the rear building setback is 25 feet. The applicant is requesting a rear building setback variance of 10 feet to be 15 feet from the rear property line, which would include units 3, 4, and 5, and is also shown in the red line. Per section 190-040, the side building setback is 35 feet. The applicant is requesting a side building setback variance of 11 feet to be 24 feet from the side property line, which is the west property line, which would include units 2 and 3 and is shown in red. Per section 190-040, the front parking area shall observe a 35-foot front setback. The applicant is requesting a front parking area setback variance of 20 feet to be 15 feet from the front property line. Additionally, Division 280 requires self-storage facilities to provide, or they provide 1 parking space per 10 storage units, plus 1 parking space per employee. As submitted, the plan requires 6 parking spaces, and the applicant has provided over 20. The existing parking areas are shown in blue, with a 35-foot required setback shown in red. Here we have a rendering of the proposed buildings. The dimensions aren't really what's important. It's what we're showing here is what the structures will look like. The applicant's justification statement is that the reduction of the required front building setback will allow the proposed side buildings to match the setback of the existing building. The reduction in the required rear building setback will allow 3 of the buildings to gain 10 feet of storage while maintaining 15 feet for landscaping to be installed. The reduction of the required side building setback on the west side will allow the proposed buildings to all be of similar width. And lastly, the reduction of the required front building setback or front parking area setback will allow the new parking to match existing parking. Here we have the picture of the existing building. The red line is the 35-foot front parking area setback. Same with the red line, still the 35-foot. On the right, you can see where this building will be, which I believe is building 2. Here we have building 3. Here we have building 5. Here we have building 6. Here we have a view looking north towards Hit Lane. Here we have a view looking south. Here we are looking east towards Hounds Lane. And this is looking west. And right here, where we get it? This is the easement access, which is shown right through here, or access easement. Lastly, the applicant is requesting a front building setback variance of 58 feet. Required front yard is 100 feet, and requested front yard is 48 feet, or 42 feet rather. The applicant is requesting a rear building setback variance with a rear yard of 25 feet, required rear yard of 25 feet, requested rear yard of 15 feet. Therefore, the variance request will be 10 feet. The required side yard would be 35 feet. The requested side yard is 24 feet. Therefore, the variance requested would be 11 feet. And then the required front parking area setback of 35 feet. And they are proposing a front parking area setback of 15 feet with a requested variance of 20 feet. Be happy to entertain any questions.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, Mike Riley did come back into the meeting about a third into the presentation of the staff. So if he has any questions about what he missed, he can ask during the applicant's presentation.
Very good. Thank you. Questions for Tom?
When I'm looking at everything you presented, I'm looking at what is between the building. In other words, what part is asphalt, hard surfaces? Because as we look at this, we're looking at the different setbacks that are 3 are being changed. How much of it is hard surface and will be covered, and how much is permeable?
Great question. Looks like most of it for the plan submitted. I believe there's a note on here somewhere, but it's going to be proposed asphalt. So you can see right here, there's notes. It says proposed asphalt right there.
That asphalt then goes back to the back of the buildings or only to the?
That might be better for a better question for the applicant. Let them get into those details and what they propose.
Hey, Tom, just so I understand the application, there is currently one building that exists today. And the applicant is wanting to build an additional 5 others surrounding it. The existing building that exists today, how far off the front, how far off a Hit Lane is that?
Off of Hit Lane. So the access easement shown in purple is 956 feet long.
Okay.
And you're maybe another 35, 40 feet from the end of that access into the site.
Okay.
So just a hair shy of 1,000 feet.
My other question is, in our packet, page 5 shows the property outlined in red, and then it shows other buildings to the back, which would be to the east, and I believe to the south. No, it's at an angle there, so I'm trying to figure that out.
What was your question then?
Can you pull up page 5? What is page 5 in ours?
Yeah, let me grab my packet real quick.
Rob, are you asking what the surrounding buildings are?
Yes.
Sorry, sir. So page 5 for me, Rob, is the zoning map.
It appears to me those other structures on somebody else's property.
Well, either way, what Rob is asking is what are the buildings, whether it's on the zoning map, aerial photography, do they exist and what are they used for, right, Rob?
Yeah, I want to know what they are and how close they are. And
The buildings that surround it, those are for, I believe, one Stutzenberger Farms, and then the other one would be probably part of that concrete, big concrete plant.
I think it looks like they are kind of surrounding the red area, Tom, on the map. You
Yeah,
know,
so they're off-site, correct?
yeah,
well,
I know they're off site, but that's not the question I'm asking. I realize they're off site. I want to know what they are and what they're used for
right.
and what we're surrounded by.
That's a great question. I mean, I did not look into it that much, but I know they just, they look like industrial buildings.
Okay, well, if you don't know the answer, then that's fine. We'll ask the applicant.
Further questions for Tom? Okay, thank you, Tom. Okay, if we could have the applicant state your name.
Larry, this is Barry Baxter. I represent the applicant, that is Hit Lane LLC. Present in the Zoom meeting with us are Tim Mueller, who is one of the members of Hit Lane LLC that may be able to answer Rob's questions regarding surrounding buildings, as well as Chris Crumpton, who is our engineer. And Chris is going to present our application. He's got, I believe, a PowerPoint he'd like to share on the screen, if he would be so allowed.
Yes, thank you, Matt.
Chris, are you unmuted?
Yes, here I am.
There we go.
Okay,
I'm going to mute myself. Chris, I think they need you to state your name and give your professional address and describe what you do.
Got it. Chris Crumpton, Bluestone Engineers, 3703 Taylorsville Road, Louisville, Kentucky, 40220.
Okay, good morning, Chris. Thank you.
Morning.
And you got a presentation for us, or?
Yes, I will. I'll just roll through it real quick. It's very similar to Tom's, but hopefully we can answer some additional questions that did come up, okay?
Yeah. Do we need to make Chris the host to do to present this?
No, he should be able to share his screen.
Okay, let me see if I can try that.
Here we go. We got it, Chris. Thank you.
There we go. Okay. Let me roll through a couple slides here, and I have some blow-ups we can talk about. I also have an additional aerial photo that may help with some of the surrounding information. So let's see here. This is, of course, the location map. You guys know where this is. This is the aerial photo that I was talking about, and I think this might help explain, with the site being 1,000 feet setback from Hit Lane, it sits really behind the new Oldham County treatment plant. Okay, it sits there. And Leiter's Quarry, they operate their quarry operation almost entirely around the northeast to south side of the project. And so if you're seeing any buildings on either aerial photography or GIS mapping. It's really just going to be some type of building that they have used for a light office or equipment storage, which I think one of them was this one right here that you guys were looking at. To the southwest, where they were showing up as another little building, part of that is the Stutzenberg farm, I think, gets used as a sod farm. And part of that was just a couple lean-to buildings that are used to either store sod or hay or small equipment, okay? Even to the north, this entire area here between Hit Lane and the site is actually used for topsoil storage. So from time to time, you'll see large piles of topsoil. And then as they use that, it kind of goes away and comes back. I think in the pictures that Tom showed, it looked like it had been fairly leveled out, but it is a stockpiling area. So I think to answer the question of what can you see from the site, you really can't see anything. You can't even see the site. You can't see the site from Hit Lane. You can't see the site from the subdivision because of the quarrying operations. And then there's also a line of trees along the west side of the site that abut the existing access drive that block any view from the west as well. So we really feel like this site is pretty isolated, given that it does sit back, and thus we've asked for the variances. So let me continue a little bit here. We talked about the existing zoning being light industrial. It's on about 3 acres. The existing building square footage is 10,000 square feet. Thus, we're proposing an additional 39,420 square feet with 20 parking spaces. We are proposing a detention basin on the site. In our impervious area, I'll go back to the site plan here in a second, but that will take up about 82% of the site. So when you were looking at the area between the buildings, all of that is asphalt pavement so that we can access all these doors on the multiple buildings. I'm not going to roll through the variances again. I'll talk about these in more detail on the site plan, but again, it's to reduce the side yard setback, the rear yard setback, the front building setback, and the front parking setback. This is just the overall plan. Okay, so here's the blow up of the plan, and I know Tom had some of these highlighted, but I'll go through them again. In the back, there's a required 25-foot rear yard, and we really felt like 15 feet is more than enough because we're going to add some landscaping through there in order to screen, even though, again, you really won't be able to see the back of these buildings because of the quarrying operations that go on. On the west side, there's a 35-foot side yard setback. And what makes this side yard a little bit different is both buildings or units 2 and 3, being 70 feet wide, have access from both sides of the building. So if you remember that building layout that Tom brought up, you can see that both unit 2 and 3 have building access from both sides. Okay, thus this building is 70 feet wide, whereas over on units 6 and unit 5, they're only 60 feet wide, but they're only accessed from the west side of the building because we have the detention basin to the east side of those buildings. So going back to this, on the west side, we've got a 35-foot required side yard setback, but we're asking for that to be reduced so that we can have the buildings at 70 feet wide, if that makes sense. Then along the north side, the existing, we're trying to match the existing setback of the existing building and the existing parking setback as close as possible, okay? So then going back, I think, to the question, there's gates along the front between the proposed buildings and the existing building. So vehicles would be able to access through either gate. and would actually be able to wrap around the existing Unit 1 to gain access to any of the other buildings. Unit 5 and 6, you would not be able to drive behind those. Between Unit 5 and 6, where I've got my cursor now, LG&E is proposing a transformer service here to serve the rest of the buildings, so there would not be access there. So anywhere behind the gates, along to the back edge of the site, or to the back edge of the buildings, units 3, 4, and 5 would be asphalt. And then to the west of the site for units 2 and 3, there would be asphalt there as well in order to gain access to the west side of those buildings. I think that's it. Did I answer all the questions that you guys had? Or I can entertain more.
Chris, it's Barry Baxter. So while you've got this up, if you look at the front of Unit 2 between the west property line, there's an X there, and you've got a line drawn. Is that proposed to be fencing or a gate?
Yes, that's fencing. That's fencing. So let me explain the fencing. The gate is just between Unit 2 and 1 and between Unit 1 and 6. However, fencing will secure the site. So the fencing will wrap around Unit 6 and 5. And actually, there's an existing fence there now. If you see it, there's an existing fence that runs down, touches the south property line, heads west, and comes back up. So we'll really be tying back into that fencing and re-securing the site from the entire frontage of the buildings to that fencing.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you, the perimeter, except for the gates, will all be fenced.
Correct.
And then we'll have 2 gated access points that we can get in and out of the site.
That's right.
Okay, and then you've got, and just so we're clear, it says proposed asphalt, and it's a little confusing because you've got the width between all of the units at 60 feet. And it sort of looks like the asphalt is boxed in between those two, but you're saying that there will be asphalt essentially from where the fencing starts at the front of Unit 2 and the west property line, and it's going to be asphalted all the way down to the end of Unit 3. And then there would be asphalt between all of the units, proposed asphalt. And with the area where the transformer is going to be, is that going to be asphalted as well?
Well, I think on this plan, what we were showing is that we thought there might be some turnaround area in here.
Okay.
So we were showing that part of this might be asphalt, but now with LG&E wanting to put their transformer in there, I think all we would have is really asphalt up to the edge of these buildings between Unit 6 and 5.
Okay. And then your final construction plans, you'll show how the water that is with these impervious surfaces, how we're going to shift that to that detention basin. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I can explain that now. So the detention basin sits on the east side of the site. We'll have a couple of inlets in between the buildings here with one main line that just runs down the center of the buildings and empties into the detention basin. We may catch some of this as well up in the upper parking lot and bring it back into the top of the detention basin as well. But yes, all of that will be captured and run back into the detention basin.
Okay, and then the buildings themselves, they're going to be concrete pads, is that correct?
Yes, there'll be concrete pads, and maybe Tim can even explain the buildings in a little more detail, but they are metal structure buildings on top of concrete pads.
Okay, and we'll let Tim talk about that. One more thing is in the top left corner of this drawing, there's a 35-foot private access and public utility easement. And is that the extension of the easement that we use to access this site?
That easement was granted when the treatment plant was constructed and is shown on that plat. And I'm assuming what happened is when that parcel was subdivided by minor plat, they wanted to continue to provide access to the Stutzenberg farm via that existing gravel access drive that runs down the west of the site.
Okay.
So that was granted to keep that in place.
All right. Very good. Do you have anything else, Chris?
That's all I have. I can entertain questions as needed, unless
All right,
Tim
well,
wants to go ahead and
we're-
explain the building construction.
Well, let's let Tim talk just a little bit here, and then I think we move to the questioning of the applicant at that point. So, Tim, are you unmuted?
I am. My name's Tim Miller. My address is 6004 Mosier Farm Road, Prospect, Kentucky, 40059.
Thank you, Tim. You are a member of the LLC that is the applicant on this project?
Yes, I am.
And so what has been put up here is Chris was kind enough to put just an outline of the building. This is not the dimension of all the buildings. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. If you don't mind, take a minute to describe what it is that you can do with these buildings and what you're going to do. And if you don't mind, also explain to us what you're going to do to the existing structure.
These new structures are going to be same as the existing structure. They're steel buildings, metal framed trusses on slabs. The existing building, we are going to reskin so it matches the new buildings in color, but we're also going to add 4 garage doors to each side of the existing building and close off the garage door across the back. So all the accesses for all these buildings will be from the sides. We're trying to park, RVs, boats, and collector cars is what we're trying to create a community here for. Most RVs the larger RVs are 42 to 45 feet. That's why we need several bays that are 50 feet deep. So the first buildings there that are 70 feet wide, they're going to be sectioned off and 25 by 50 bays. And then on the backside, 25 by 20 bays for collector cars and stuff like that.
Okay. And what about units 5 and 6 that are shown on here that are 60 foot in depth?
They're just going to remain 60 feet in case someone has to. They're going to be 25 by 60 bays due to the retention pond. Originally, I wanted them 70 feet where they mirrored buildings units 2 and 3, but when we had to add the detention basin, it cut off that access.
Okay, and you described, when we looked at the building, just kind of a rendering of what the buildings are going to look like, there are bay doors. Are there actual garage doors that are going to cover that, or are they going to be, is it open storage?
No, it's an actual, it's a 24-hour secured facility with cameras. You have a man door and a 14 by 14 garage door to access your 25 by 50 bay or 25 by 20 bay on the backside.
So if I'm understanding the man door, if the garage door is closed, you can get in and out through the man door.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And we had, there's been some discussion about what appears in some of the aerials to be some existing buildings on adjoining properties.
Yes. I think Chris told everybody the front one is the Oldham County Treatment Plant. The one to the southwest corner is, it's just a lean-to. There's some construction material stored in there. It's accessed from that gravel easement road. And then over on Lighters, they have a large lean-to that they store topsoil under to keep it dry. And then they just have some various equipment spread out for their quarry operation.
Okay, and to the north of your site, in looking at this picture, it looks like, is that topsoil storage or what's going on there?
Directly to the north of the star, that field is a topsoil storage field. If you start going to the right, there's 2 buildings up there. Those are Leiter's equipment buildings. I believe they store some like dump trucks and equipment in, and one is an old processing topsoil plant.
Okay, and as I recall, out in this area, there's also an asphalt plant that is not Leiter's owned, but there's an asphalt plant, or there was at least, was there not?
I don't know of an asphalt plant out there. Behind us, kind of where the T and site is on this drawing, there is a concrete crushing recycling machine where Leiter's was bringing in waste concrete. They were milling it back down to gravel and reselling it or reusing it.
Okay, and if we look right to the right of your access, that's a cell tower, is it not?
Correct. Yes, up on Hit Lane.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of industrial type use that surrounds you. What's going on with the Stutzenberger property? That's zoned agricultural.
Yes, 10 years ago, it was a sod farm. LS Sod Farm operated out of there. For the last 10 years, it's just been let go. You can see there's some disturbed areas on this site below that red line. And that is, I don't know Leiter's agreements with Stutzenberg, but Leiter's is using part of that farm. But there's been no activity on that farm in the last 10 years. It was actually let go, I think just last year. Someone came through and bush hogged everything down. There was trees growing and everything.
Okay, and if you look at this picture at the very bottom of the page, there's a subdivision there.
Yes, Rock Springs.
All right, can you see from your site? Are you able to see anything that's going on the Rock Springs property?
No, you can barely see that tree, the top of that tree line, because all that disturbed area under the word site is built up higher than our property. Built up as in a good 20, 30 feet built up higher.
All right.
Where they've.
And this red line that kind of goes diagonally below site, is that the county line?
Yeah, it's Oldham County, Jefferson County line.
Okay. To your knowledge, has anybody complained to you about your proposal?
No. You know, I don't see how further down Hit Lane you have MSD's treatment plant. We have the Oldham County treatment plant. I live across the highway on 71. I don't, there's odors over that way from the treatment plants. You know what I mean?
So I guess your point is that this use is a good use for the site because of the location and the proximity to the Oldham County treatment plant and the MSD plant?
Yes, I think we're dressing up the neighborhood.
Okay, all right, very good. Anything else you want to tell the board?
No, I think Chris has covered most of it.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I think that concludes our presentation.
Very good, guys. Thank you. Great job. Great presentation. Do we have any questions for the applicants?
Mr. Crumpton, one of the questions that I have is, as you've shown on the prior, and if I'm not sure who's running this now, but if we could go back to the prior slide, which shows where the retention basin is right there. Perfect. So on the detention basin, my only question is, because if we grant the variances as requested, you have more impervious areas than you would have. So there's less. So if there was runoff off the back sides of these buildings or anything, it would be running onto neighbors' properties, unless you've got it contained and all of it going into the detention basin. So you can talk about the calculation of the detention basin. Is it at the limit? Is it over what was required? Tell me the expectation I should have about the detention basin and runoff.
Okay, sure. We've actually sized the detention basin based on the site plan shown. So based on the impervious surface that we are creating, both from the asphalt as well as the roofs, the detention basin is big enough to handle that amount of flow per the county stormwater standards.
Chris, if you don't mind me interjecting here, I think another concern, and Mr. Houchins, I don't want to be speaking for you, but I think another concern is are you going? You've sized the detention basin to accommodate basically the amount of impervious surface that we're creating. Is it your intention that the impervious, that the flow will end up in that detention basin, or are we going to be creating flow onto other people's property? I think.
Okay, I see. Yes. So, no, we will design and have installed catch basins to make sure that we are catching all of the stormwater runoff that would be created from the impervious surface. So both from downspouts on the buildings as well as runoff from the parking lot or asphalt areas. We will make sure that that flow is captured, taken back into a stormwater pipe, and distributed to the detention basin.
Does that answer your question, Rob?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Barry, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I don't know if everybody knows that the whole land underneath this site and into Jefferson County has been mined by lighters. So there's a cave underneath us. I don't know if everybody knows that.
And Tim, to that point, I mean, you're not excavating into there'll be some small excavation that will be done to level out the area for the concrete pads.
Yes.
But this isn't going to be excavating down into the subsurface area, correct?
No, correct.
Okay. All right.
I've got a question or two.
Mr. Crumpton, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ron.
Okay. When I'm looking at this image that's on the screen, what I'm going to refer to as the south side of building or units 3, 4, and 5. What's proposed for the surface to the south of those buildings? Is that going to be asphalt also, or is that going to be strictly landscape and perhaps some sort of vegetation?
Yeah, so the edge of the buildings will be the limit. Edge of building unit 3, 4, and 5 will be the limit of the asphalt. So the 15 feet that remains between the buildings, the asphalt, and the rear property line will be landscape buffer area. So that will be planted.
Okay, and then to just follow up on that, then, which we're going to refer to as the west side, to the left of units 2 and 3, is it my understanding that all of that is to be asphalt in that area? If
yes,
that's the case, then
yes.
you mentioned stormwater collection points in the middle of the buildings. Do you have some means of collecting the stormwater to the west side of units 2 and 3?
Yes, I would expect that we'll have some additional catch basins, either, up in this area here to the northwest of unit 2, as well as the southwest corner here of unit 3, so that we can catch stormwater that would run off in that direction.
Okay, and then I'm sorry, I've got one more follow-up question to all of that. If you're asking for the variance on the south side, why are the buildings not proposed so that we can meet the setback requirement? Why are you asking for a larger area? Is it just strictly for monetary benefit and gain? Or is there a specific reason why those units must encroach into that setback area? On the south
Tim,
side.
you want to answer that?
By shortening those buildings 10 feet, I lose 5 storage bays. Originally we were going for, I believe, 58. We lost 10 on unit 5 and 6. If we shorten that, I lose another 5 buildings. We go from 48 to 43. And then I just don't know if the dollars will work by doing that.
If I can interject as well and ask a question, Tim,
Sure.
just so I understand, and I think it's important. I mean, the 30-foot span between units 2 and 3, 1 and 4, and that is necessary in order so that the vehicles that you're talking about storing, the larger RVs and boat storage, for example, have adequate turn radius. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the width between the buildings, the 60-foot width between the buildings, likewise is to accommodate people being able, for example, to back a boat in or back an RV into one of these spaces. Is that correct?
Correct. A 45-foot RV, it's going to be tight, but they'll be able to manage in a 60-foot wide area to back into their bay.
Okay, so in other words, if we were to narrow the 30 feet between those buildings, in order to access the bays on the west side, it would be difficult to do that because you wouldn't be able to turn out of the space between units 2 and 3 even to get there. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. So beyond the monetary concerns, you're utilizing this site to the maximum as it is, and if you and in order to access buildings, and you can't really decrease the width between the buildings, for example, in order to increase the number of spaces.
Correct.
Mr. Funk, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Barry. Appreciate that.
I guess this is a question maybe for either Tim or Mr. Crumpton. The 2 questions: the distance between where you are in the subdivision. I know you said that the elevation behind you is higher, but what is that distance? And secondly, directly across the street from Hit Lane, what are those buildings? And maybe you've already addressed that, but if you could repeat.
Directly across from the entrance, the Hit Lane 900-foot road, is a cabinet shop, Louisville Countertop, I believe. To the left of that is a 2-bay storage building. To the left of that is Zeppa's Landscaping. And then you have, I forget the home builder that has his,
Okay.
Yeah, that's who's over there.
All right. And then the distance between you and the subdivision?
Chris, do you know that?
I would say it's at least 500 plus feet. Because it's 1,000 feet out to Hit Lane, so it's probably half of that or more.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I hate to interject myself on a factual matter, but that Windy Willow Drive, I think, is in a Oldham County subdivision that is not part of Rock Springs. There's a subdivision on Highway 22 just past the Louisville Memorial Gardens East that the access point is in Jefferson County. And there is a portion of that subdivision that is in Oldham County. So, for example, school buses have to drive into Jefferson County, back into the subdivision to pick up kids that go to the Oldham County schools. And so you've got Windy Willow subdivision and you've got Rock Springs, which are, you can't see from this site map, but where it says Windy Willow Drive, I believe that is in the Windy Willow subdivision. And then where the county line intersects there, you see kind of a larger lot. I'm pretty sure that is Rock Springs, which is in Jefferson County.
Okay, thanks, Barry. Okay, any other questions for the application?
My question is about uses. What we've talked about in uses so far has been about as easy as you could be as a neighbor. If it's just going to be storage of boats and somebody comes in occasionally and pulls something out or puts something in. Are you going to be potentially renting to someone, for example, who would come in and be producing something, making something, using equipment, putting in equipment into these facilities?
Tim?
No, we are going specifically, my partner in this, he found the need of an RV. He had nowhere to park his RV. If you do the research in Louisville and Oldham County, there's nowhere you can have 24-hour secured parking for your $500,000 RV. And that's why we're trying to fill this need. You know, and there's only 48 bays. The Rocket Man storage in Oldham County has a waiting list for their RV bays that they have.
And Tim, when we talked about this yesterday a little bit, you had indicated one of my concerns was that this will not be a facility where somebody, for example, could park their RV, plug it in, and live in it. Correct? I mean, that'll be a violation of the rules.
Correct. Yeah, and you couldn't live in it, and we don't, obviously. I don't want anybody running a business out of this, so to say, like a repair shop trying to fix cars there, because we don't. This is a storage facility, not a business rental units.
So if Mr. Houchins wanted to propose a binding element, that would be a use that would be prohibited, you don't have an objection to that, correct?
Correct.
And are you familiar, Tim, with the location where Boone Gardner used to be over in Oldham County on Old LaGrange Road? It's now a brewery.
Yes, up there by the fire department.
And just past that, there's a row of buildings. There's a storage facility there, and then there's a row of industrial buildings that somewhat resemble what you're doing here, where there's a bunch of businesses in and out of there. That's not what you're talking about, correct?
Correct. We don't have the parking for that. This is supposed to be a, you know, kind of an unmanned storage facility, so to say.
Okay, and I'm going to keep your focus in that area. There is a yard, fenced-in yard in between the brewery property and where those industrial things are. You're familiar with that storage facility? It's just kind of.
No, I know the buildings you're talking about that run businesses out of them. I'm not familiar with that fenced-in property.
Well, I'll just describe it for you. It's got a covered kind of a barn area, open, and there are boats parked in the yard and things like that. Again, you're not proposing having people parking boats that are not undercover.
Correct.
And all of these units would be self-contained with doors, individual access doors. So it's not going to be open storage.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So Mike, Barry referred to exactly what I was heading towards as a potential condition of approval. Let me read what I just wrote. So if this is an acceptable way to word it, I'm open to options and ideas from anyone. If we were to approve, that is, the property shall be used for storage exclusively and shall not be used for business activities operated on a near daily basis. Is that reasonable?
Tim, that's to you.
Yeah, I would say that's right along with what I'm proposing here.
Got a few more questions. So we've talked a lot about the use of the building, the asphalt impervious area. I don't know if this is the best slide. I don't recall that we've had a good slide to actually show and demonstrate the requested variances. I know, so if somebody could show me the variance for the building and then the variance for the parking. Do we have a slide that actually shows?
I think Tom had a really good slide in his presentation, if he wants to pull that back up.
Sure, I'd be more than happy to. All right. We'll go back to
Tom, I think if you look at the next slide, that demonstrates the setback. You had the next one after that, maybe. So that would be the front yard variance request. Is that correct, Tom?
Correct. This is the front building setback.
And then I think you work your way through the next two slides, show the rear and the side yard setbacks. And the one at just after that shows the parking setback.
That's perfect. Keep going. That's perfect. Go to the next one, Tom.
All right. And
That's
here's
the rear. All right, show me the side. Perfect. Okay, those are the building requests. Now show me the parking. Perfect. Chris, I believe this is a question for you. In your presentation, if I'm not mistaken, you had 82% was impervious. Is that the correct number?
That's right. Yes.
Okay, board members, any other questions for the application?
I have a question for staff. So when when the calculations come in on someone submitting a plan like this about impervious and the detention basin's adequacy, that's all gets reviewed when the building plan is approved?
That's correct. Yeah, there's a site plan review, construction plans, and the engineering department signs off on the stormwater before we issue any building permits.
Thank you. No further questions from me.
Okay. Board member Riley, do you have any questions?
No, no questions.
Ron, any questions?
No questions.
And Jason, any questions?
No, no questions.
Very good. Okay, thank you guys. So I meant to do this prior to the presentation, but staff, do we have any letters of opposition or letters of support for this application?
Great question. We have not received any letters of support nor opposition. The only letters that we did receive for the public hearing speaker request were from the attorney, the applicant, and the engineer.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Is there anybody wishing to speak in favor of the application? And actually, whoever is, Tom, I think that's you sharing. If you could take the sharing away so we can go back to the gallery view.
Sure.
Although I like having that presentation in front of me. Okay, anybody here wishing to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none. Anybody in opposition of the application? Seeing none. Board members, any questions at this point for anybody? Okay, final statements.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I don't think we got opposition. I'm sorry to cut you off there. So I think I'm the only one that might have a final statement. I think Tom did an excellent job outlining what has been proposed with this particular site. I think if you look at the aerial of the site, you will see that, it's not by definition, since it's an easement, a flag lot, but essentially what you've got is a piece of property that is set back from the road 900 feet. It's located in an area that makes it uniquely perfect for what we are proposing, in that the surrounding properties are not going to be negatively impacted by what we are proposing. In particular, the property owned by Lighters is an industrial use, and they're running equipment out there. Any other use that would have somebody, for example, occupying this as some kind of building might be adversely impacted by Lighters activities more than they would by ours. So I don't think you can see this from the south view, and the west view is such that that property is not being used at this point. We're sitting on top of an abandoned mine, so we don't want to be digging into there to try to impact that at all. And then you've got the sewage treatment plant that's right nearby that is going to negatively impact any other use that's got regular occupation because of, as Tim described, the odor. You've got MSD that's just down the road that also creates a nice smell from time to time. So what we're asking to do is a good use for this property. We understand that we need to follow the site plan. The way the site plan is allows a good use of the property for us and would, again, not negatively impact any of the surrounding property. So we would ask you to approve the multiple variance requests.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Board members, questions for anybody before I close the floor? Okay, I'm going to close the floor for public hearing, open it up for discussion among the board members.
Go ahead and start. When I looked at the packet that was given to us and the page that it's always given about what the surrounding properties are, what the zonings are, I'm just going to read through these real quick. R2, CO1, C3, AG1, I1, I2. I mean, it's one of those pieces of property where you're always concerned because you have everything from people living in houses to heavy industrial all in the same area. So you want to make sure that the use that's being proposed will fit and not upset the surrounding things that are being done. This property right now does sit in kind of a unique situation, which is a long ways away from R2. It sits a long way from the actual public road. In terms of accesses, my questions were clearly answered about runoff, because you don't want to have too much runoff going into certain areas. So that as long as the approval process and the design is all done, I think you couldn't ask for a much better kind of proposal to do something like this. And given the fact that the detention basin will take in the rest of the 82% of impervious areas, I have no issues with this. The only other question I had was about what uses we were going to do in terms of operating businesses, and the applicant has agreed to a condition saying that they were not going to allow people to come back and rent space and operate a business out of a nearly daily basis. That's not what the intent is, and they're agreeable for that. So for me, I have no issues with this application at all.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Rob. Any other discussion?
I concur with what Rob said. We've had this application in our hands for quite some time to study all the ins and outs and ifs and whatever. And I think I agree with Rob. I think it's a very good project for the area.
I'd just like to call your attention. I did question the impervious surface area. It is one of the regulations that it doesn't, the maximum is 90%. So I just want to bring that to your attention. It's something I had to look up, and this application obviously falls within the regulation. Any other discussion? Okay, I'm ready to take a motion.
I'll make a motion. 1 second. Move to approve OC-20-002 based on the evidence presented at the Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing of what the use of this property is, the containment of water, the uses of surrounding property, the giving that it's a mixed area of zoning in the area. I move to approve the variance because it will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, will not cause a hazard or nuisance to the public, and will not allow an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulations. Conditions of approval. The variance shall only apply to the application considered at the March 19th, 2020 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing.
Well, that's May 21st. That was the old staff report.
Oh, you're right. I'm reading right off of it. Yes, please change that date.
Yep.
A landscape plan shall be submitted for review and approval prior to permits being issued. A lighting plan shall be submitted for review and approval prior to permits being issued. And the last one is the property shall be used for storage exclusively and shall not be used for business activities operated on a near daily basis.
And Rob, would you consider adding, we talked about no open storage of any type? The applicant has agreed to that. So there's no storage of vehicles outside the buildings.
I'm agreeable to such a condition of no outside storage to be allowed on the property.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
I'm
Mike
sorry.
Riley.
Thank you, Mike.
I second.
Thank you, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order. I want to make sure there are 4 separate variance requests. So Rob, that motion applies to all the variances?
Yes, please.
Okay. We have a second. Any discussion? Okay, I'm going to do actually, Amy, if you can do a roll call vote on this, please.
Sure. Mr. Ballard,
Approve.
I didn't hear you.
Approve.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Mr. Houchins,
Yes.
Mr. Otterback,
Yes.
Mr. Funk,
Yes.
Mr. Riley.
Yes.
Thank you, Amy. The application's been approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we be excused?
You may be excused.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Riley, could you read the next docket, please?
Yes. Docket OC-20-003. An application has been filed requesting a front yard setback variance for a proposed structure on property located at 14318 Rose Wycombe Lane, Prospect.
Okay, thank you. And Tom, if you can give us the staff report.
All right, perfect. All right. So like Mike stated, an application has been filed requesting a front yard setback variance for a proposed structure on property located at 14318 Rose Wycombe Lane in Prospect. The property zone CO1 conservation is approximately 2.5 acres. Above, we have the aerial map. Here we have the pavement, so it shows the pavement and the surrounding structures. And for the surrounding structures here are all residential in use. And here we have the zoning map. So we have R2 surrounded with, or we're surrounded by R2 and we are right now in CO1.
Tom, can I ask you to hold on just a second? I'm having trouble
Sure.
with the screen. For some reason, it's not wanting to expand.
So you're having trouble hearing me?
No, I'm having trouble seeing your presentation. So give me a second to expand it. Okay, I've got it. Thank you.
All right. So there's no previous site history. So there are 3 easements that run along the frontage of the property. There's a 10 by 30 electric and telephone easement or telephone guying easement in green. There's a 10-foot water easement in blue. There's a 10-foot electrical and telephone easement in red. The subject lot must observe the CO1 minimum front yard setback of 50 feet along the property frontage. That 50-foot setback is shown in red. The applicant is proposing to construct a new home 25 feet from the front property line, requiring a 25-foot front yard setback variance, which is shown in yellow. Here we have a contour map showing steep grades on the property. The 25-foot line is somewhere along here, or I'm sorry, 50-foot. But this drop between here and here is so 502 contour all the way down to roughly 472, 474. So you're looking at 25 to 30-foot drop where the proposed structure or where the setback is. The applicant's justification is the lot mostly consists of hills and ravines which are not suitable for building a home. The unique conditions and circumstances of this application are not a result of the applicant taken after the adoption of zoning regulations, and the proposed residence will be a traditional home that will keep with the essential character of the neighborhood. Here we have site photos. So this is standing on Rose Wycombe Lane, looking into the site. Here is roughly about 40 to 50 feet in. So here you can see where the steep drop off occurs. It's right along this ridge line. Here's just another photo looking in and to the left. So as you can see on the bottom right, it's the direction arrow. So it's quite a steep drop. Here's looking where the last photo was taken, looking back out towards the street. Here we are looking west down Rose Wycombe Lane. Here we're looking east up Rose Wycombe Lane. If you were to continue further driving up the road, you'd drive further into the subdivision. Here's the adjoining property owner on the other side of the street. And this is also the letter, this letter of support came from this household. Lastly, the applicant is requesting a front yard setback variance. The required, it should say front yard. Required front yard is 50 feet. Requested side yard is 25 feet. Front yard is 25 feet. And the variance requested is 25 feet. Be happy to entertain any questions.
Do you have any pictures looking to the house next door? That's across the street.
Correct.
Tom, where are you standing? Are you, when you took that picture there?
That's on the roadway.
The road, okay. So that's on the roadway in front of the proposed location?
Correct.
Okay. And if you turn around 180 degrees, I think you showed us where the drop off. Show me where the, yeah, right. So right there is 180 degrees.
Correct.
How far onto the property are you when you took this picture?
No more than 45 to 50 feet.
And
maybe a 10-second walk.
okay. And what kind of a drop off am I looking at? How far of a drop off?
Like I said, I believe I
there you
took
go.
a photo around this area right here. So maybe standing right here, took the photo, looking down this direction.
Okay.
So it's pretty steep.
What are the the topo, what's the distance between the contours?
Sure. So down here, this is the 472 contour, or 474, I'm sorry. And then up here we have the 502. So
Okay.
this is a 25 to 30 foot drop.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions for Tom?
So do you not have a picture for the next door property? You can't.
Sorry?
I'm asking, can you see the next door house? Again, I'm looking at my packet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th page in, where you show that there's a house next door.
Mhm.
Like I can't tell if there's a house on the other side or not.
So are you speaking about this house right here?
Yes.
Yeah, you cannot see that from the property, from the subject property.
Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Mhm.
Tom, letters of support or opposition?
Yes, sir. So we did receive one letter of support from the neighbor across the street. I had sent out that email to the board yesterday. I'm more than happy to pull it back up and do the screen share if you all would like.
Does anybody need to see that letter of support? Okay. All right, thank you, Tom.
Mhm.
And I'm going to ask you to come back to the share screen in a second. But for now, if you could take the share screen off so we can see the gallery view again. Thank you. And if the applicant, if you could, I guess, raise your hand, state your name and address.
Raise my hand, yes.
I would just to
Cindy
acknowledge.
Bickle.
Thank
Sure. Cindy Bickelman, current address 909 Artisan Parkway, LaGrange, Kentucky.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Okay, if you'd like to tell us what it is you'd like to do and justify it, please.
Yes, basically, I know that you've read the packet. I can be honest, I don't have anything to add from what is in the packet. It's, I mean, I'll, just briefly restate that for us to best utilize this property and build something that's suited to the property and not build in a pit or a ravine, we need the variance, excuse me, to move the house forward. We are building a beautiful home, consistent with the neighborhood in design. It's a European, kind of a classic European house. It will also, I guess one thing that I could add, the house will still be nestled in those trees that you see. It's not going to be outwardly obtrusive because of the way it will still be nestled in the trees. The last thing I would add is we were most concerned, obviously, about the neighbors directly across the street. And, they graciously invited us over, asked us to explain our plans to them. We showed them our plans, our previous build, a lake house. And so they're very pleased with what we're doing, very supportive. And they're the ones who wrote the letter. And really, they're the only house we can see from our house. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Board members, any questions for Cindy? Or do we need to put the presentation back up? Do you want to see any of the presentation?
Actually, the question I have, I'm not sure if I shouldn't have asked it during the staff presentation. And that was about the easements, because is it 30 feet of easements from the front property line? Because if I'm trying to understand, because we're talking about a 25-foot setback, but it looks like to me now that while she was talking, I was looking at the presentation, and it looks like it's 30 feet of setback that is required for the easements.
Great question, Rob. So I had thought the same thing, but here we can do a screen share and I can show you what I was looking at. So it's just barely outside of the 10 by 30 telephone and electric guying easement. So right here is the 10 by 30. So you have 10 foot here, another 10 foot here, so that's 20 foot. And this easement, the green one, is 30 foot in depth.
Yes.
But on the next slide, you can see this telephone easement right there, that guying easement.
Yes.
It's just the northeast or northwest corner of the building is just outside of it. So it sits just a few feet outside of the 10 foot, I believe that's a telephone easement. And then it sits just outside of the 10 by 30 guying easement. So they are in fact outside, but just barely.
Okay, so if we granted this variance, we would not actually be imposing on any of the easements, is what you're telling me.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to keep the presentation up?
I'm done with it. I don't know about it.
Actually, yeah, well, that's all right. All right, that's fine. Cindy, I do have a question for you. If we were to not approve this application, what is the hardship?
I want to be perfectly transparent and honest with you, because the variance was only one issue. The other issue was we were given the wrong building requirements from the original homeowners association. So there's been two real big roadblocks or challenges, however you want to look at it. And I guess I do prefer the second. And given all of that, the landowner who sold it to us says that he will refund our money if we are not granted this variance, which is unbelievable, but that's where we are.
Would you be able to still build and fall in compliance with the regulation? Could you push the structure back?
We would not be able to, no, not with the new size requirements and then the land difficulties and challenges. We have shared with the land seller that his name is John. We have shared with John that we would not be able to, we just would not want to at that point. It's like everything has changed and become more challenging. I'll keep using that word. So we would not build there if we are not granted this. Respectfully, we would return the land and begin the process again of looking for land.
All right, and sorry, just to keep pushing a little bit, but why would you not be able to, or why would you not want to?
Well, so we were downsizing. We were going to build a little bit smaller home. Now this home is 5,000 square feet. You can't start building it until the ravine. You literally have to build that 5,000 square foot house in a pit. So the increased requirements with the pit, excuse my, just what I'm calling it, it becomes, while maybe an impossibility is too strong of a word, it becomes something that is not feasible financially, nor do we want to take that on mentally and emotionally, quite honestly.
Okay. All right, any further questions for Cindy?
I have one for Cindy. Kind of talking about being able to move forward pending the approvals. Have you already spoke with the health department and received the site and soil and septic requirements, or have you already got that established?
What requirements? I'm sorry.
For your on-site sewage, for your septic system?
We did, we had a perk test and we were informed as to what we would need to do for that. Yes.
Okay, so if this were to be approved, you've already spoke with the health department and you have a system design criteria and approval to move forward with that?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, further questions? Okay, thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
So as Tom mentioned, we did receive a letter of support. Is there anybody else here wishing to speak in support of the application? In opposition of the application?
Sir, my name is Stephen Sylvester. I own the properties at 14315 and 14317 Rose Wycombe Lane. So across the street, just to the right of the house that was shown in the photo. We just recently pulled building permits, so we're about to start construction in the next few weeks, hopefully, on 317. So basically across the second property across the street.
Tom, could you put a map back up so we know which, where he is?
Yeah, so if I can, you'll forgive that I'm new to Zoom, but if I'm doing this correctly, these two properties here are mine, and we're going to build a house. Oh, that's a bad drawing with my thumb, sorry. Roughly in the center there of the marked property.
Okay. Okay, and if you could tell me your opposition.
So first off, I haven't had a chance to see the plans or drawings like my soon-to-be next-door neighbors did, and they've spoke highly of them. So I have no reason to suspect that would be bad in any way, shape, or form. But after consulting with my realtor and my builder, it come to the conclusion that given the location of our house up on a ridge line, we'll have much more view of this property than our next door neighbors would, as they kind of have some terrain that's in between them. And so on my builder and realtor's advice, I am opposing this, in that every other house in the neighborhood sits well back off the property line. The next door neighbor to them is the only one that's even remotely close to the 50-foot setback requirement. And I believe this would look very much more like a Main Street downtown setting, so close up on the road. Not the house itself, obviously, I'm sure will be lovely, but to have a large house 20 to 25 feet back off the road is going to be a very different aesthetic than everything else in the region. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions for Stephen? Okay, Tom, if you could stop the screen share again. Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else wishing to speak in opposition? Okay, Cindy, this is a time for rebuttals. So do you have any rebuttals for opposition?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would say is, first of all, I certainly understand his concern, and I apologize right now at this second, I forget his name. Oh, is it Stephen? Yes. At any rate, the house, I firmly believe, will not look obtrusive at all, because the 5,000 square feet, taking advantage of the ravine, we will still be building the house, the back portion, the back side of the house, down the ravine. So that 5,000 square feet is spread over 3 floors. So it's not going to look massively huge at all when you consider that. 1, 2, back to, it will still be nestled within trees. And I don't think it will look Main Street at all. I think it will fit into the neighborhood very well.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Stephen, do you have any comments or rebuttal?
No, look, I wish her all the best. I just, based on the advice of the folks that I considered experts in my life, since I am not, reference this, I just felt like I had no choice but to speak in opposition. So.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Cindy, do you have anything else you wish to say?
I do not. Thank you so much.
Okay. Board members, do you have any questions for anybody in the audience?
Yes, I do. So Cindy, my question to you is about, there's been oppositions spoken against, and you had made reference to trees and other things being kept and those kind of things. So what I'm specifically asking you is to address how many trees, how mature the trees are, what would be in front of your house, between your house and the road, and then specifically at an angle, your house and the person who spoke against it.
Okay. We will plant some like pines that are consistent with the house. And I have a picture of a house that I'm modeling it after in front of the house. But as to specifically your question of keeping trees, as you can see, there's kind of a natural place to build a house on. I call it kind of like a little plateau there. It's like the only natural place. Fortunately, that also does not include many trees. So we don't have to take many trees down. But the trees that we will maintain that I'm talking about are the ones that will be around the sides of the house, certainly, obviously, the back of the house. But like Tom said earlier, that house will be still nestled enough in there that we do not see our neighbors to the left. We don't see hardly anyone, but I realize I'm getting off track of your question. We will maintain every tree that we can all around the perimeter of the house, the property. We want to do that. And then we will do some planting in front as well.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to have brought up back on the screen the picture of the proposed house so that we can see that compared to what the person who spoke in opposition as to where they said they were going to build it more towards the middle of the two properties. So we can see that distance, and we could bring that back up, please.
Tom?
Is this what you're looking for, Rob?
No, the one with the actual house footprint of the house on it.
Okay.
There. Okay, now I see that. Now can you go back to the other one you were just on? Yeah. I'm not sure who to ask this question, but I don't, what would be the distance between, say, the center point of the two properties that are being merged to put the house on and the proposed structure that we're looking at today?
This is Stephen. Stephen, if you don't mind, can I interject?
Yes.
Sure.
So I own both of those lots, but my actual construction will be solely on 317, which is the one immediately next to the existing house on my side of the street. So the house that I am building is pretty much equal setback as the house next to me there, directly across the street from her, and in the center of the lot next to the existing house. And just by nature of the terrain and where the open view from my house is, it's towards that front, what I would call the front left corner, as you're standing on the street looking at my lot. So looking directly towards the subject lot in question, if you will.
Okay, and then if we, Tom, could you bring up the pictures of where you were taking pictures looking down towards the road, towards where he is suggesting he's building his property?
Yeah. There's one with a truck in the picture, and that truck is essentially parked across the street in front of my lot. So here you are on the left-hand side. This is all my lot.
Okay.
And then my two lots go on back around the corner there.
Okay, Stephen, then the question I have is, are there natural barriers and trees between where you are going to construct your property and the subject property for question today?
There is a single large dogwood that is basically that will be left in between the two. This is unfortunately for this circumstance, this is the one area of the lots that we purchased that has previously been cleared largely. And so there is a dogwood tree there. That is the extent of it.
Okay, so Stephen, my question to you then is, let's assume that the property across the street had an area that was more buildable, so that the required variance wouldn't be here. What we're talking about is the fact is that the front of the house will be 25 feet closer to where you would be. So if the property didn't have the ravine or fall off, you'd still have the potential to have a property built there. It's the 25 feet closer is that you're objecting to.
Right. Correct.
Tom, go to the next slide, please. Yeah. How far off the road, Tom, would you guess that to be?
I'd say at least 150, 200 feet. It's pretty far back there. It's got a winding driveway. When you're standing in the street, you have the berm right in front of you. I'd say at least 150, 200 feet would be a safe guess.
All right, board members, do you guys need the screen share still, or do we go back to gallery view? Does anybody need the screen share? Tom, could you take the screen share off? Thank you. Board members, any other questions for anybody?
I've got one for Stephen. Have you already done the plot plan for your home? Do you know what your proposed setback is for the property you're proposing to build in
It's,
distance?
I do. I don't have the exact number right in front of me, although I can get it within a minute or two if you'd like. It's in excess of 100 feet.
Okay,
Off
I was
of
just curious.
the back.
I lost Stephen.
Stephen, I think you're frozen. Okay. Board members, any other questions? Okay. I guess it's, I'll close.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot to turn my mute off, or where you could hear me. Tom, to ask a quick question then. In this neighborhood, in this zoning, the required front yard setback is 50 feet. And so if two houses across from each other were both built on the front edge of that, then that's only 100 feet, right? I'm not missing anything.
I mean, the CO1 zoning requires a minimum 50-foot front yard setback. So I'm kind of misunderstanding your question then, Rob.
So if a house was built on one side of the street and another house was built on the other side of the street, they would literally be 100 feet apart.
No, they'd be a little bit more than 100 feet. So you'd have the 50-foot setback for either side plus the right of way.
Correct. Okay. All right.
I think I'm back now.
Yeah, Stephen, you are back.
I don't know if you heard my answer or not, but I think our setback is a little over 100 feet.
Okay, thank you. All right, board members, last chance before I close the floor. Any other questions?
Well, I'd like to add one thing, Rob. On the map on the bottom right, you can see Rose Wycombe is a 60-foot right of way, so it'd be 160 feet at a minimum is what they'd have to be apart. So you have 50 plus 50 plus 60.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to close the floor for public hearing and open it up to a general discussion among the board members. Any discussion?
I'm going to jump in here and ask for other opinions on this. I guess when I look at the Board of Adjustments and some of the things that we do, what we're trying to do is, keep people doing what the standards generally are. And that's why you can have staff approval for things. When there is a unique situation for a property, then the question is it reasonable to give variances away from those standards? For me, it's when you get to a natural barrier. In other words, this property, if we deny this variance, what I think we're basically saying is, for the most part, unless somebody wants to spend excessive amounts of money to build up the property or put in piers or do some things to actually build their house on a platform, it becomes unbuildable. And so when I look at that, then a denial of this, when I look at it, for me personally, a denial of this means that then there's a piece of property that remains unbuildable in a neighborhood. While I think that is the potential on some properties when they build neighborhoods and when we do the kind of things. If I look at this variance, because it's outside of the easement, there is the one where it's a little farther, but Tom was able to show us where on the map this house is built to the side of it and doesn't impede on that easement. And then if I look and say, the core of my question is, that's why I was trying to make sure I had my numbers right. If this one is set back from the road, has the easements on either side, has the setbacks, and the other houses are farther back, I think when you live in a neighborhood, unless you're buying a lot of property, you got to expect that you're going to see other houses. And so for me, I don't know that I agree with the objection that this is objectionable to see a house across the street from me. And so I'm hard pressed to deny this variance because I think they have a unique circumstance with the property. And so my bent would be to approve the requested variance.
Yeah, totally agree with what you were saying. It would become an unbuildable lot. If it's financially unfeasible to move it back to comply with the regulations. I agree that due to the hardships given with the property, I would be in support.
So my thought is, while
Jason, it's hard to hear you, Jason.
yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So my thought would be, I agree with the comments of the other board members in that this is a unique piece of property and how it's formed and the cost and everything involved. But the terrain of the land, so what do you do when other people around want to build? And what if they have similar situations? Are we setting a precedence that everybody in the neighborhood is going to get a variance going forward that may or may not be to everybody's benefit? So, there seems to be a lot of opportunity to grow in this space. There's a lot of land here. And I'm thinking at some point, people are going to continue to build like this gentleman that was in opposition. And so I just want to kind of put it out there. While this seems to be favorable for this one applicant, how does this set the precedent going forward?
Yeah.
So I don't know if Jim or any of the team can add any light to that, but I'd hate to give one person something and then other people put in for it, and then we have some issues down the road. So.
Well, Jason, that's an excellent point. First of all, regarding precedent, we've said this in many cases in the past, that each case stands on its own, and you need to take each case and the considerations thereof. Yes, I am in total agreement with you as well. We set these regulations for a reason. And oftentimes when people like Stephen buy property, they're buying the property because of the scenery and because of the general character of that area. And the general character of this area is houses are 50 feet off the road, and there's plenty of landscape in between, the site. Yes, I totally agree that the regulations are there. If we approve this one simply because it's an unbuildable lot and it does create a hardship, does that mean that everybody along the road, everywhere else is going to be the same? You're exactly right, and there most certainly is a point to decline this and to just acknowledge that it is an unbuildable lot. I'm sorry, or that it will cost a great deal to build on that lot, but it is what it is. So I certainly would not criticize declining this and upholding the regulations. The regulation is there for a reason.
Larry,
I am.
can I jump?
Yeah, Jim.
Would you mind? I think when you get to the decision, you really have to look in your staff report. We always put the reasons why you can either approve or deny. And you have to go back to those and say in your motion why you would do either one, either approve or deny. I don't think you can consider it unbuildable because We don't know all the conditions on this property. We've heard some evidence on why it needs to be pushed forward, but somebody could come along and build it. We can't say it's an unbuildable lot. We certainly don't rely on precedent. Like Larry said, this is each case stands on its own. I think you have to listen to the evidence that's presented and then again, go to these sample motions and try to fill in the blanks, either for that approval or denial.
Yeah, board members, I am torn on this one.
Thanks, Jim, for the clarification. While there are a number of things to be considered, Jim, you're right. I mean, we have motions to approve or disapprove based on what is in this package, and we need to focus on that. So I appreciate that clarification.
Okay, any other discussion?
Mike and Ron, I'd be interested to know if you had any comments.
One of the things that that I was trying to do that you were already alluding to, Rob, was you were calculating distances in feet. And I was also trying to determine the site and the visibility, which you had gone into for some level of clarification. And then when Tom brought the image back up, apparently there's some topography or a berm of sorts where the home that is built across the street sits back beyond that. But to your point, if both homes directly across the street from one another were built at the building limit, Mr. Sylvester's proposal, coupled with the houses there, is still in excess of the distances going to what you were saying. You know, I guess one of the thoughts that I had was, you know, regarding the septic system, which Cindy addressed, that the health department's already looked at it. You know, when you've got these strange topographies, I'm wondering where they're going to put a lateral field in, but they said it was approved and it's there. I think that when we're talking about a 25 foot plus or minus grade change, I mean, there are just limitations that this lot has in place that you simply can't undo or change. And I don't think that the request is unreasonable, and it keeps us out of the easements. And I think given the circumstances, although I understand what Mr. Sylvester's opposition is, and I respect that, I would be inclined to approve it as submitted, given the circumstances that we've heard in the testimony regarding this specific situation in the application on this lot.
Okay, Mike, do you have anything to add? Your mic is on mute if you do.
Much better if I can get familiar with the way you talk. I need your permission to help.
Okay, Mike, you're off mute now. Do you have anything?
Yeah. Can you hear me, Larry?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I've had trouble with this computer through this whole process. I've looked long and hard at this thing, and I would agree to approve this just because of what others have said. It was a tough decision on this one. But I would agree to this application.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? I'm ready to take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. And Rob, jump in there if you want to help me. Motion to approve docket OC-020-003 for a front yard variance of 25 feet because of the unusual terrain of this particular property. Due to the decrease in elevation would make it extremely difficult to adhere to the CO1 minimum front yard setback of 50 feet. Further justification for the variance is as follows. It will not alter the essential character of the area. It will not cause a hazard or nuisance to the public. It would not have an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulations. Conditions of approval. The variance shall only apply to the application considered at the May 21, 2020 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing.
All right, very good, Mike. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rob. Any discussion? Amy, can you take a roll call, please?
Mr. Riley,
Yes.
Mr. Funk,
Yes.
Mr. Otterback,
Yes.
Mr. Houchins,
Yes.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The application's been approved.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Cindy and Stephen, you guys are welcome to stay or drop.
Thank you
very much.
again.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I have to admit, I don't know how, oh, I'm leaving. Okay, sorry. I haven't done this before.
All right, other business, we have bylaws.
Yes, previously, there had been a question regarding the bylaws. So Tom and I went over those, and the bylaws, we have what we call informational sheets that we can give to the applicants and that the chairman also uses to understand the format of the meeting. On the information sheet for the applicant for a variance and conditional use permit, questioning by the board was not listed under items 8 and 9. So I updated that sheet. So the sheet that Larry uses to chair the meeting with the time limits was all correct. It was just the applicant sheet. So I've updated that sheet and put that in the binder, as well as if we hand those out to others. So there's no action needed by the board. It's just basically a clarification point.
Thanks for clearing it.
Yeah. Okay, the minutes. Everybody received the minutes from February 20th?
Yes.
Do we have any adjustments or modifications to the minutes?
No.
No.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I had a question on the minutes for a second, though. On the election of officers, we've said it's 4-0 and there were 5 people. Does that mean the person being voted on didn't vote?
Correct.
That's correct. Mhm.
Okay. And just for clarification, it just stuck out at me. I mean, I was one of them. So we can vote on ourselves, right? For future reference.
I guess I would ask Tate that, if you have any idea, Tate, on the Robert's rules on that.
I haven't looked at it, but I would think he could vote for himself. He's on the board, and I don't know of any provision that he would have to recuse himself from voting.
No.
But I'll check it later. We can look at it. To be honest with you, I can't answer it. But fact is, it's this whoever didn't vote still had a quorum and still had a majority vote for it.
Okay.
Need a motion?
Move to approve the minutes as written.
Can I get a second? Thank you, Ron. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Very good. Minutes have been approved. Any other business?
Filing deadline is next Wednesday, May 27th. As of right now, we have not received any applications from anybody for any action before the Board of Adjustments. Everyone should have received your new binder. So hopefully once we get the comp plan put out and ready for print, I will make copies of that for you to insert that into your binder as well. But I will keep everyone in the loop of any applications that we receive after next Wednesday, if we receive any, whether or not we will have a meeting. And Jim, I'll let you talk about, most likely we will have a meeting in person next month if we have any items.
Correct, yeah. Fiscal court is moving towards putting up plexiglass separations in between all of the seating area. Their meeting in June will most likely be in person. So if we have a meeting, I think the fiscal courtroom will be up for safe social distancing.
I have a question on that then, because I do have parents that are older, and Mike, I'm specifically addressing you because I think you're the oldest member on the board. If Mike was uncomfortable with such a setting that he'd prefer, and again, Mike, you don't have to, or Tate or anybody that is a member, if they so chose, is it an option for them to choose to be on this way?
At this point, I think so. And again, there's not been real guidance on, we understand that these Zoom meetings have become not only acceptable, but almost essential to keep government going. So I'm assuming that we'll be able to do that if anybody doesn't feel comfortable coming physically to the location.
For staff, I want to thank you all for both the binders. You did a great job, and also a great job on the Zoom meeting.
Thanks.
No worries.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn, so that everybody doesn't drop, if I could get staff to stay, I just want to talk about presentation just on a go-forward basis. So if you could stick
Larry,
on.
probably best is to come down here to the office
Oh, that's
Yeah,
fine.
because
we're on Facebook Live.
right.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Like a motion to adjourn.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting